Welcome to the webinar. I'm delighted to see the level of interest this one has generated. We've got, I think, over 350 people waiting to get into the room. So as they start trickling in, I'll play for time. So my name is James Wood. I'm one of the editors at the Legal 500 and GC magazine. So the title of today's session, as I'm sure you all know, is Digitisation, Disruption and the Legal Department of the Future. And the idea is to hear from some of the region's leading GCs and, of course, law firm partners on the changes they're seeing, the projects they're undertaking, and what they think the future will hold. Now, the starting point here, I guess, is twofold. Firstly, we published at the back end of last year, we published a major research report looking at a very similar set of questions. And for that, we surveyed over 100 in-house lawyers in the Asia-Pacific region. So that report was supported by WSG, the World Services Group, which I'm sure you know is one of the largest and most prestigious of the legal networks. I suppose legal network undersells it. It's to give it a more accurate billing. It's a professional services network of independent law firms, accounting and investment banking firms. So we've partnered with them again today to put together this webinar. So thank you very much to WSG for supporting it. We are joined by two of their partners today, or two of their member firms partners. So Machana Chu, a partner with Deacons, which is the biggest full service firm in Hong Kong, and Tom Marsland, a partner with Minterellis Red Watts, one of New Zealand's preeminent firms. The other idea behind the webinar is more content driven. Asia Pacific legal market is becoming one of the most dynamic on earth. There's a lot of interesting things going on, which we'll hear about shortly. So we'll be getting a brief overview of those topics from our speakers in just a second. Before we hear from the speakers, before they introduce themselves, I just want to say a final word on audience participation. We obviously want to hear from you in the crowd, so if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat function on Zoom to ask them. We'll do our best to get around to them. So I guess now it's time to hear from the speakers. So I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves. Maybe I will start with Carl Watson, joining us today from Dubai, but normally based in Hong Kong. Carl, do you want to say a quick hello?
Thanks very much, James. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Carl Watson. I'm the regional general counsel here at Arcadis. Arcadis is an engineering company originally based in the Netherlands, but we are a global consultancy. I cover the Asia region, so we've got 11 markets here in Asia. I've been with Arcadis since 2014. Really passionate around digital and legal efficiency in terms of our legal operations. So, really looking forward to participating today.
Excellent, thanks, Carl. And next we've got Per Hoffman of Ericsson. Per, let's give us a quick introduction.
Thank you. My name is Per Hoffman. I am then the regional head of legal for Ericsson located in mainland China, covering mainland China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. I've been living in China now for almost 5 years, and before that in other parts of the world. Been with Ericsson now for a bit over 20 years.
Excellent, thank you very much, Pat. Okay, we also will hear from Sheldon Renkemer of Wesfarmers. Sheldon, say hi.
Hi everyone, Sheldon Renkemer here, General Manager of Legal at Wesfarmers. Wesfarmers is a diversified conglomerate based in Australia with operations largely in Australia and New Zealand across a range of different industry sectors. My role encompasses both a general counsel role as well as overseeing our legal operations initiatives through the group. And I'm also involved in CLOC in Australia as well. So CLOC's the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, a group of interested legal operations people.
So thanks, Sheldon. Okay, Greg Chu of Nanyang Technological University. Greg, can you give us an intro, please?
Yep. Thanks, James. So Greg Chu, I'm based in Singapore with NTU. So NTU is very well known for its education in STEM. We're one of the top 50 universities in the world based on Times Higher Education rankings. So I've been at NTU now for 3 years. My first time in a quasi-public sector role, most of my life in MNC roles and the roles like many of my peers on the call today. So it's been a very interesting journey for me, and happy to share more in a few moments. Thanks, James.
Excellent, thanks, Greg. Okay, so moving over to China again, we've got Ivy Wu of DXC Technology. Ivy, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, James. Hello, everyone. First of all, Happy New Year of the Ox, and wish you and the family a pleasant New Year. And this is Ivy Wu. I'm now working in DXC Technology and serving as the Greater China Legal Lead based in Beijing. DXC is the world's leading business-to-business IT service company, which was founded on April 1st, 2017 by the merger of enterprise service business of HP and CSC. I'm now managing a comprehensive scope of legal affairs in DXC Greater China, including deals, disputes, corporate governance, regulatory compliance, and employment law, etc. So in DXC, we believe that the new technology can build a more meaningful career. So in legal department, we actually develop our own legal digital innovation tools, and we hope that our legal team can be a pioneer in legal digital transformation. So I'm very honored to be invited today to discuss this very interesting topic with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Ivy. We also have Susan Cattell of AMP. Susan.
Hi guys, so I'm Susan Cattell, I work at AMP, have been there for about 6 years, but in general have been doing legal operations or operations improvements projects for about 27 odd years.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, well, moving on to the WSG partners, I mentioned them earlier, so Machana Chu of Deacons, Machana.
Hi everyone, this is Machiana Chu from Hong Kong. I'm a corporate commercial partner at Deacons. Deacon is the largest local law firm in Hong Kong. So I have been in private practice for nearly 20 years. So alongside my corporate M&A practice, I have developed a particular focus on technology as well. So basically growing alongside, walking the journey with our clients in the past decade or so. So very happy to join this webinar today.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Tom Marsland, partner with Minter Ellis Redwatts. Tom.
Hi.
Minter Ellis.
Hi everyone. Hello. Yes, hi there. I'm Tom. I'm joining from New Zealand. I'm a corporate and commercial partner here in Minter Ellis and Redwatts. I specialize in technology as well. I assist our corporate M&A team with acquisitions of tech companies and acquisitions of companies heavy in tech. But my main area of expertise is helping companies enter into agreements for large technology transformations, like swapping out ERPs or CRM systems, helping them to procure them effectively, integrate them, and then support them through the contract lifecycle. I also help companies when the projects go off the rails by helping them to manage their dispute process and either get their projects back on track or manage their exits and their claims. Likewise with everybody, I'm very excited to be on this panel today and looking forward to having a really robust conversation.
Excellent, great. Exquisite wallpaper there, Tom. I'm not sure if that's your offices or coming from home. It's very nice. Okay, great. Look, we'll start off by discussing the big picture, some of the big picture changes that have been seen in the market. So I guess this is a question primarily for Per and perhaps Ivy. But Per, to start with you, you've been in China for 5 years now, I think, but you've been in the Asia Pacific region for much longer. And I guess over your many years there, you've seen big changes in the tech space. Many of these countries rising to become, I guess, leading global producers. What's taken place in the legal tech space over that same period? Have you seen big changes since you moved to Beijing in terms of legal tech and how it's being used there?
Very, very good question. And I think looking back a bit, many of the technology support we are using today has been around for quite some time. I actually did some looking back, and I had my first legal team meeting over video 25 years ago. We were quite novel back then, but so all of that has been around. I think what's happened the last couple of years, the legal units, the legal teams have put together digitization and use of legal tools into their strategies. I think, at least from my horizon, we are now today working much more focused and having a strategy around using legal tech and using tools to provide better support. This last year also has elevated that a lot with us not being able to travel. Many of us travel a lot, and now this last one year we haven't traveled. So I think what we see now is a much more usage of these tools in a much more structured way, I would say. But I think I see what's coming now, and what we are pulling together now is combination of automation. We are using those NDA automation tools. We are doing e-billing and working together with our both our external firms and also with these firms helping us with structuring our billing and follow up on that. So it's much more structured way of approaching technology, and I think that's where we will now see the next step, where we will be making much more efficiency gain from using it much more. And I think the way we are working today with video meetings and checking into various collaboration sites and so on, I think that is what we will be living with going forward as well. So I'm very happy with seeing now this more structured approach towards technology. And now with 5G coming into the world as well, I think we will also see a lot of applications going forward where we'll use cellular technology much more. We will not be so dependent on Wi-Fi. We will see combinations where you use cellular and Wi-Fi, and you will always have coverage wherever you are.
Okay, excellent. Well, look, speaking of remote working technologies, Ivy, I guess it's a good time to turn to you, because DXC, you built Teams basically, right? You collaborated with Microsoft on producing Microsoft Teams platform we've all been using. So I'll ask you, I mean, what have you seen over the past few years in China when it comes to legal tech? Has there been a big increase in the market for legal tech over there? You're on mute, Ivory. Happens to her.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's obvious that the legal technology had proved the efficiency and more agile working style during the past years. I think one of the very important reasons of such great development is that the cloud-based platform and big data generated the artificial intelligence-based legal tools. Many industries have gone through the digital transformation journey during the past years, and it is the same as the legal industry. Legal digital innovation evolved in law firms, companies, and government authorities. People believe that the technology can drive new levels of performance, competitiveness, and lower price. I think there's a sign that more and more small to mid-sized legal technology companies has coming into the market. For example, DXC is now partnering with United Lex, which is one of the biggest legal technology company in the world. I think some of the law firms, they are also investing some online tools for legal research, translation, analysis, etc., for their own use and as a benefit to their customers. And lawyer on demand, I think, is becoming a trend. And a lot of companies are purchasing or build up their own legal management platforms for contract storage, deals and dispute management and approvals and outside counsel engagement, trainings, etc. For example, our DXC built up our own BriefBox platform and developed functionalities on that, which I can discuss later on. So I think it's obvious that the legal technology has helped everyone in the market improving their performance. But I think what impressed me most is the impact that the legal technology has had on the judicial system in China. It's surprisingly that during the last year, given the COVID-19, because we cannot go to the court personally, so we actually filed the lawsuits electronically and attended several virtual hearings online. In the beginning, we are very nervous on that and we don't know how to do that, but surprisingly, it works. So I think especially for some high developed regions like Beijing or Shenzhen or Shanghai, it's becoming so common and efficient to use these legal technology tools for the judicial system. And I think you don't need to take, previously we take many course or waiting for the mails to check the progress of litigation. But now the courts actually provide you the service by using these technologies. And I think a more interesting change that I really like to mention is that, for example, the notarization of evidence can use the legal technology as well in recent days. For example, we actually use the timestamp or blockchain technology to preserve evidence for some of the litigations. And some of the courts in Beijing or Shanghai or Shenzhen, they can admit this evidence. And another very interesting thing that I want to mention is that we are more and more rely on the WeChat or smartphone applications to obtain the new updates and analysis of the information or the new laws. So I think the email-based newsletters from the law firms are mostly replaced by the WeChat subscription that you can very fastly to find out the new laws and analysis from the law firm. So, and virtual seminars, like virtual meetings become more and more common, like this one, right? We can invite everyone in the world to meet together, and people become more and more like peers to learn with each other and work like a community. So I must mention that as the development of legal technology in the world is quite preliminary, so I'm not sure if the market is quite regulated. This is one of the topics we can discuss later. But I believe that in the later stage, when it becomes more mature, there will be more discussions on the IP right, cybersecurity, trade secret about this shared knowledge. But I'm quite, fantastic on the development of these technologies. Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, it's interesting to hear that China's become a leading center of innovation in legal tech. I guess I'll move on to Greg now, based in Singapore, because one of the things the government of Singapore has done is it's publicized its ambitions to make Singapore an international legal tech hub. I gather there's a fair amount of investment moving into accelerators and things like that. So Greg, can you give us a brief overview? I mean, what's going on in Singapore from your perspective? How is it changing the market for legal tech?
Thank you, James. No, you're absolutely spot on. I was just thinking as Ivy was speaking, I think about the recent Zoom video with the cat, and I was hoping, as long as I don't turn out as a cat on this video, I've been successful in using the platform. So hopefully I don't look like a cat, but you're right. I think Singapore is it's adopted a very consistent approach, as you can tell. I think it started off about 10 years ago when they looked at the Singapore International Arbitration Center, and then followed on with the Singapore International Court. And then recently, last year, they signed the Singapore Convention on Mediation, which is really the UN treaty. I think it's really consistent with what Singapore is trying to do to establish itself as a legal hub. I think what the Ministry of Law has done and what you've been talking about, James, is that they put in a 10-year roadmap, which will basically allow both law firms and law students to benefit from the opportunities that will be enabled under that roadmap. So, for an example, I think it's about close to $4 million has been set aside to allow law firms to take the benefit of legal tech with the 80% kind of recovery rate for law firms who go about taking that route. I think for law students, some of the universities in Singapore have started doing combined courses. For example, now you can do both a degree in science and law, so computing and law, so which is very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see the first batch of students that come through with that. I think in terms of the impact you'll have on the in-house community, I think without doubt, I think we're already using legal tech quite a bit. We're going to have to use more of that, I think, as lawyers are expected to add in the more high value and strategic kind of transactions that are expected of us. So that's my take on what the Singapore government and where we're heading with the investment in legal tech.
Excellent, great, thank you. Well, I guess similarly in terms of island states in the region, Machana, so you've, along with other people at Deakins, you've been focusing on tech and increasingly working with new tech businesses, but I think you've also done quite a bit of work with the Hong Kong Science Park. other statutory bodies. I think I'm right in saying that, Marchana, you've worked with statutory bodies that are again trying to make Hong Kong itself a hub for tech. I mean, not legal tech, just for tech. I mean, what are your observations there? I mean, has there been a big takeoff in this type of thing in Hong Kong?
Yeah, technology innovation has become a very obvious focus of the city. It's sitting driving the future of the city as well. I did advise the Hong Kong government through Hong Kong Science Park in set up an Inno Fund. Inno Hong Kong Fund basically is $1 billion subsidies that the Hong Kong government has approved, has set aside to support technology development. So the aim is to develop Hong Kong as an R&D hub. Focuses on AI, robotics, and also health tech projects. And it wanted to attract global leaders in R&D to set up in partnership with Hong Kong companies, Hong Kong like universities, companies with very strong R&D. So that is a base, and also one of the in terms of developing the R&D, developing tech talent, and also commercializing technology are also the priorities of the Hong Kong government. So that's what we have seen in the public side. The government is really active, throwing out a lot of money to support the development in the tech sector. On the private side, I have advised a lot of tech startups. So a lot of new disruptive technology model. I mean, based on technology, have been established. And Hong Kong, given we have a very good environment for capital raising. So we have seen quite successful fundraising projects that take off in Hong Kong as well. And it's also a priority of Hong Kong to establish ourselves as a fintech hub. So we see new regulations by SFC, Hong Kong MA to construct a viable and stable regulatory regimes for fintech companies to establish and continue to grow in Hong Kong. So yeah, it's a very exciting space.
Okay, excellent, great. Sheldon, I'll move on to you and get an Australian perspective. So I mean, aside from being very senior in the legal team at Wesfarmers, one of the things you're doing at the moment is leading CLOC. So people in the audience may or may not have heard of CLOC, the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. I think its title is. But you've got an overview of what's going on in Australia, and Australia itself has quite an active legal tech scene, doesn't it? It's not just CLOC. There are other bodies doing this. I mean, what's going on in Australia then? What's your perception of the market?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. There is quite an active tech industry in terms of the legal industry in Australia, and it is spreading through Asia and elsewhere. And I think Australia probably punches above its weight in that sense. And reflecting on that, I wonder if that's a product of us being sort of a relatively litigious and relatively heavily regulated jurisdiction, such that our legal teams and the legal industry as a whole is quite mature and sophisticated. And so really, and this is a consistent theme across the industry, we are looking for ways to try and address legal risk in the most cost-effective way that we can, and deal with that sort of issue that Richard Susskind has spoken of the more for less challenge. How do you deal with the challenge of an increasing workload in a legal function at the same time as having a fixed or reducing pool of funds as a cost center to be able to handle that work? So we're seeing quite a lot of collaboration as well, and that's where CLOC comes in. CLOC is an organization that started several years ago in the US and has emerged from there and really become something of a global force for effectively bringing together people with legal operations capability so that they can share experience. And it's really based on the principle of avoiding having to recreate a solution where somebody else has already created that solution. So it's quite a grassroots organisation. looking at how people who are in that legal ecosystem can make use of the solutions that others have already developed. And so I think it's a super helpful organisation, one that's quite exciting to be part of, and consistent with that, seeing quite a lot of adoption amongst in-house teams of technology, and also leveraging the technology that's being invested in by the law firms that support us, because obviously the law is their core business, whereas it's not so much our core business as a broader organisation. And so we're seeing law firms investing in tech accelerators to try and build technology that can help them do their work and potentially commercialize that as well. And so leveraging that capability is something that we're also quite focused on in my team, and then more broadly in other organizations.
Okay, excellent, which brings us on very neatly to Tom. So I know your firm exited a tech joint venture. We won't talk about that just yet, but I'll get your perspective, Tom, as a lawyer sitting in New Zealand. I mean, look, I hate to characterize this as a smaller market, but I mean, it is in terms of population. And I guess given that we have people in the audience joining from a variety of jurisdictions, some of them maybe get overlooked when it comes to purchasing legal tech. What's your perspective from New Zealand? What are the challenges people in smaller jurisdictions have to face when it comes to getting legal tech?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, James, which is we're a country of 5 million people, which is pretty small. And so if you consider most of the people on this panel with me are probably from countries which are probably see that as a very small village in their countries. So we have a lot to try and do with a very small amount of resource. I mean, that said, a lot of the firms and a lot of the companies here, legal teams, have adopted, very quick to adopt things like Microsoft Teams. That happened in the same period as everybody else around the world has done it. Where I think we really struggle is when you look at that more advanced technology, that real cutting edge stuff that you've got. So if you consider that the average in-house legal team in New Zealand and most law firms are very small, they've got less available funds to adopt the more expensive legal tech. It would take a truly compelling ROI to invest. And that actually means that cutting edge legal tech providers don't generally come down to New Zealand. They might come as far as Australia, look across the ditch, maybe come and check out our dolphins in Wales, but don't really try and sell tech down here. You also have an inbuilt fear of adopting something, spending money on it, and it not working. So there's a fear of failure, that people might choose not to adopt legal tech because they don't want to take something that isn't guaranteed to work. So there's a bit of a wait for the tried and true product. On top of this, you've got time poor general counsels. I mean, around the world, I think everyone's very short on time to do things. But around here as well, they look to industry experts or innovative law firms to tell them what's out there. And we don't have a clock in New Zealand. We don't have, our equivalent of ALTA in New Zealand is a very small group of volunteers. So, we struggle to have the same impact in sharing that information. On the flip side, though, using the number 8 wire analogy, which is what everyone always talks about in New Zealand, we use a piece of wire to get something done. We do have more and more organizations try things out themselves here, or smaller Australasian focused tech players, or even law firms themselves like us. We step into that space. So you try to develop things and commercialize them. Where in New Zealand, I think legal tech is right now, is incremental small change, people doing things themselves, trying them out themselves, creating new products themselves, while trying to keep an eye out on the rest of the world and see what those killer applications are that might come around the corner and really change the game for legal providers. It's really more in New Zealand about efficiency at an incremental low cost level rather than a high risk transformational strategy. That's what's happening here.
Interesting. Brings us nicely to Carl Watson of Arcadis. So Carl, I think you joined in 2016, I believe.
Yeah, 2014 actually, yeah.
2014, sorry. Yes, but you were the first, I guess, first GC for the Asia Pacific team at the time. Presumably not much in the way of legal resource or indeed technology. I mean, what was your strategy there? Was tech a kind of big part of building a team from scratch?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look, listening to my panelists here, there's a lot of shared stories, a lot of content that I recognize. Now, Ivy mentioned earlier on the A word, agile, and I really see, that word bandied around, but it's a really powerful word if you look at it. That technology for me has enabled me. Again, I think it was Sheldon used the classic Sussecan quote, "more for less" as well. We're coming into an Asian region. Reporting into line managers who saw me land in from a law firm without a huge amount of experience. He was saying, "Who is this guy who's been thrust upon me?" I had to earn my spurs and had to earn their trust, number one. And the way to earn trust is to deliver some quick wins, identify those low-hanging fruits, listen to them. Number one, what do you need? What do we want? What are our problems? What are our challenges? What can we win together on? That's not all negative. We don't need to be, those people that businesses like ours keep in a box or in a separate room. We can be at that top table. We can be looking at solutions in a positive way. So I see technology actually. It's liberating brain space is a simple way I look at that. Yeah, fantastic tools that Ivy and Microsoft have worked up over the years, and other colleagues on this call. Legal solutions, legal risks. Our business partners within our businesses or within our clients' businesses, they want to see a bit of FaceTime. They want that human contact because they want to trust us that we're going to take the problem away or we're going to help them win. So I think what we've got to do is see tech as that delivery engine where we can, standardize, automate, digitalize a lot of this routine, repetitive process, legal reporting, claims management, etc. And that is freeing up that mental agility that we have as human beings, as lawyers. Often we've got to remind our business that we are human beings as well sometimes, but allowing us to get under the bonnet, looking at the context of the business. A lot of headwinds with COVID and other things, so it's a very complex environment. Asia is a complex region in complex times, so having that freedom to think about those solutions and compliance assurance, innovative ways of contracting. In our case, as a business globally, we're aggressively pivoting into a more subscription or platform-based model to allow our clients to self-serve. So we're fortunate that we've got a lot of tech development within our business in our centers in Manila and across India, and we can use some of that sort of client platform-based solutions and future for us in our legal team. So I think trying to see what we've got and the bench strength we've got within the business and mobilizing that for legal as well is probably another call out that I would say.
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, you've touched on the more for less challenge, the Oriole cliche. Sheldon also touched on it. So I guess I'll move on to Susan now, because look, underpinning a lot of discussions about legal tech is of course efficiency. But Susan, you're coming at this from a slightly different angle. I guess you're the person who's brought into the company to make sure that processes, people, technology are working as efficiently as they could be. I mean, what's your view on technology? Is technology the kind of the optimum way of getting those efficiency savings, or just be focusing on other things that generate similar improvements?
Look, technology is great if you use it correctly, but if you have broken processes and you continue with those broken processes with technology, you're really just automating bad processes. So, at the core, you really need to look at those processes. Are they working as efficiently as they could be? Can you make them more efficient? Can you, take cost out? Can you, asking all of those questions to try and get to the root cause, getting those processes as schmick as you can before you can actually build that into the technology. Otherwise, you're just putting, bad information or bad processes into tech, which doesn't help. Well, I find anyway, doesn't help at all.
Okay. I'm gonna ask a question of the audience while we're on the subject. So, question is your company supportive of technology implementation solutions? But let's just say technology. So I know if people in the audience want to vote on that. And while we're waiting for the votes to come in, I'm going to turn back to you, Carl, because something you touched on just then is the ability GCs have to take existing Office suite technologies and kind of retrofit them to do a lot of the work that the legal team needs to do. And it's an interesting point because a lot of the time when we discuss legal technology, the focus instantly goes on buying expensive new systems. But I mean, What are your thoughts on, I suppose, well, can you talk us through some of the work you did, I guess, to retrofit existing technologies, and give us your thoughts on how you can actually get big wins there?
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned earlier on, James, I mean, you've got to kind of listen first. You've got to look first as well. And a lot of times what we have in our businesses, particularly if you sort of subscribe to ubiquitous suites like O365, which I guess most of us do because we need some of that functionality in our daily lives. There's a lot of free stuff, if you will, packaged in with O365 away from Outlook, Excel, and PowerPoint, or Word. If you look a little bit deeper, an example that I find quite effective is Power BI. It links into our Excel. What does management like? It likes charts. It likes to boil stuff down into a one-pager. And so if you are monitoring, for example, utilization of your legal team in a market, what are the sorts of contracts they're working on? If you can set up through Excel some basic reporting, you're getting that dashboard data. And the dashboard data is super powerful, because what you're then giving your leadership or your management teams is where you're needing investment decisions. If you're needing more resources in Singapore, you need to be focused on getting in some extra talent around disputes because you've got some big claims in India. Whatever it is, you've got that data available through Power BI, which I think is powerful for us. The other one, there's products in there like Power Apps, for example. So if you're looking to it's a 1.0. It's not all singing, all dancing like some of the external legal tech specialist providers, but you can customize and build with a little bit of knowledge. You can customize and build an end-to-end process within some of those apps, which starts through that automated journey that Susan's just mentioned. Yeah, you've got to start small and test things out. The good thing about tech is that, if it's not working, you can drop it and move fresh onto something else. You've got that agility. You're moving with the times. But I think once you step into that environment, it is something that you'll never look back from. Another big thing around the world that we're seeing in a lot of corporate strategies nowadays, again, is sustainability. And a little thing that I've required for all of my team is we've all got access to Microsoft, notes on our machines. So you can get a pencil on your iPad or whatever template you got, and you can write away. Little things like that, cutting down on paper, cutting down on copying. It's a wider picture you've got to look at, and I think that. Yeah, we do then also as a corporate, as a publicly listed corporate, like a lot of our colleagues on this call, we've got that corporate reporting. So we do obviously have also that external legal tech and reporting platforms that we buy in separately to those Microsoft systems. But at the same time, we're kind of questioning, if I'm being honest, do we really need to be buying that? Because say you're only ever using maybe 60% of the functionality of that platform. Do we really need to do that? Can we look to engineer something which, again, through the products and platforms we've got available in-house, which is really fit for purpose for us? So I think that's just some initial builds. Keep it simple. If you've got the opportunity to use the products and start small, and then think big.
How difficult is it to work with these products to kind of tailor them to produce outputs that are useful for a legal function? I mean, you presumably don't have any extensive background in tech, but worked out how to do this. I mean, is it a challenge? Is it just take a couple of days looking at YouTube videos? Or?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm leading a team. I'm very fortunate that my EA, I mean, she is very much my right-hand person, and I trust her to keep me on track with my work, but she's also got a real thirst for developing her skill sets around some of these platforms. So giving Winter kudos on this call, she's doing a lot of this, and her role has then expanded away from looking after Carl into data analytics in a legal space. And I think one of the colleagues earlier, Greg, you were mentioning, another link here is the talent management, the talent of the future in legal functions. We're not going to be old school, old fart lawyers like myself going forward, and the talent coming into our industry and profession, both in law firms and in-house environments, these guys are digital citizens. Even talking about this, if they were on this call, what do you know? This has to be natural for us. It's not a lifestyle choice, but the careers of the future, the talent of the future. Interesting to see at Nanyang, you're looking at like a technology engineering legal, data science, data architecture, being digital interpreters between a legal technical skill set into that membrane of what is needed to be seen within a business. I think that's a really exciting space as we look forward as well.
Yes, okay, excellent. Look, I mean, I guess one of the things that holds, psychologically at least, that can hold GCs and lawyers back from making these changes, they'll say, well, law is different to other areas. It's difficult to get these savings. I mean, I'm going to turn to Susan here, because you've been doing change management, process management for a number of years. It's only really in the last 3 or 4 years you've moved into the legal space. So what are your perceptions? I mean, is there something ultimately different about the law, or can many of these tools and techniques just be applied to legal teams unproblematic?
Yeah. So if you look at process as a set of steps, I guess, to achieve an end outcome, we all do it in every part of our day, personal life, work life. At its core, process improvement is pretty much taking a look at those key steps, identifying what those pain points are, fixing them, and then making those processes more efficient. But with that in mind, I guess, process improvement is about a mindset and a skill set, and it's transferable between industries. And I know I've had the run-ins, I guess, with people who do also talk about the legal teams being a little bit more special, let's say. I guess I've run, at a variety of organisations in a variety of industries. I've run exactly the same methodology, and we've always come out the same way. I guess in terms of the legal team, sure, there's a higher degree of regulation. There's the need for lots more additional privacy and security settings. But at its core, they're certainly not blockers to a more efficient process. So, in general, yes, you need to get into the nitty-gritty, into the detail, but if you look at your legal team as a business, let's say, and you work through that process, it's not any different. If you break it down to a process perspective, it's not any different. And definitely legal tech and process improvement could benefit any legal team.
Okay, excellent. Look, just an update on that poll that we had. Essentially, the question was how supportive is your business when it comes to bringing in new tech? 92% of legal teams feel supported. So I'm going to launch a follow-up poll there. So how would you rate your legal team's use of technology to improve efficiency? How do you think you're doing with that? Okay, while we're waiting for the results to come in, I'm going to turn to you, Tom. So we've heard about some of the difficulties with change management that legal teams may face. What's your perception as external advisor? I mean, you must see a lot of companies kind of trying to tell an innovation story through technology and this not working out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's really looking at this from a firm's perspective. What I see firms doing across the world is they're really showing a desire to show their clients publicly that they are being innovative, that they're adopting tech to keep their costs down, being more efficient, and thereby reducing their impact on their own staff. However, at least for some of this, I think there's smoke and mirrors. I've heard of firms that sign up to trial licenses with major multinational AI companies to assist with DD, but that software is barely, if ever, used. It's shelfware. It gets thrown on their websites for a bit of kudos of innovation, but in reality, those firms are doing DD the same way as they've always done them, by using juniors. So I think that stems somewhat from large corporates, rightly pushing firms to be more efficient and adopt new tech and relieve their staff. However, in my view, if corporates really want to see change in the industry, they do need to do more than just put a line in the terms of engagement for their law firms. They do need to get their panel firms to show it in action, to show you how they're using that tech to make their employees have a better work-life balance, how they use it to be more efficient. So that's one side. The other side is the legal tech providers have to take a bit of responsibility not to oversell their products. Taglines of this is going to give you 60% efficiency gain and a 20%, 25% improvement to your bottom line. It's got to be established. It's got to be able to be actually substantiated. If not, it ruins the credibility of that company. It ruins the credibility of the person in the firm trying to bring it into that company, and it affects the credibility of the next tech company down the line to pitch its product to that law firm. So my view on this one, I think, to speak to the general counsels on the panel and on the audience, look under the hood of your panel firm's statements of innovation. It's okay for them to be innovative with small incremental change. They don't need to have the shiniest tool in the toolbox. And to the promoters of legal tech, make sure you can substantiate what you're selling before you go sell it to these firms. My view.
Okay, that's a very good point. I guess it'd be interesting to hear the rest of the panel's thoughts on that. But before we do, I wanted to ask you about one of your own innovation stories. So let me get the details right here. So my understanding is Minter Ellison Redwatts had a joint venture with McCarthy Finch, I believe, and last year it was sold to Onnit, the big global tech provider. It's an interesting example of a firm in New Zealand developing market-leading technology, selling it to one of the big players. What can you tell us about that then, Tom?
Yeah, sure. So this started back in 2015, 2016, really playing back to the conversation I had before about large multinationals coming into our market and saying, hey, we've got this product. They were coming in 2015, 2016 and pitching their really impressive credentialed and huge potential products to us. But they came at a cost New Zealand law firms just can't justify. I mean, those products are designed for multinational law firms working on cross-border transactions in multiple languages, dozens of times a year. And New Zealand just doesn't have that kind of activity to justify the spend. So McCarthy Finch is a JV between us and another tech company called Goat Ventures, which is a New Zealand tech company. It was the brainchild of our then Chief Technology Officer, who was on a very long bus trip across Israel while they went on a delegation to look at the startup nation. And he was sitting next to the chairman of this tech company, and they got together and said, hey, I see an opportunity to create an organization combining the legal insights of a top tier law firm and the technology skills of a leading tech company and bring them together to create a really smart AI legal tech product. Fortunately, at the time, we had a very forward-thinking board and partnership who saw this as an opportunity to really investigate the potential of AI in the legal industry, to see how a major disruption by AI could impact our profession, and in particular, the people we have in our organization, and hopefully to make some money off it. And when you combine the forces of the target market, being us, with the technology provider, it led to the creation of a fit-for-purpose product that fitted an Australasian size company. So Minter's in Australia, Minter's in New Zealand. We're relatively small globally, but we created something that was for that size organization. But it didn't stop there. It caught the eye of corporates around the world as well. So we sold it into Australia, we sold it into the US as well, and across New Zealand. And as part of all that, it caught the eye of Onnit, which, as you said, James, is a global behemoth who liked the product that they saw, and we sold it to, well, McCarthy Finch sold it to them at the back end of last year, and they're going to combine those products with their substantial product set of their own, and we retain a shareholding in Onnit, and we're very excited to see where Onnit's going to take it. But it really shows that if you combine the brains of a law firm and the brains of a technology company, combine them together and evolve and iterate on a product, so you're creating something that is fit for purpose by users using it right then and there, you can really create something quite special.
And I guess, I know you've touched on this, but it comes back to, I suppose, the specificities of being in a country with a relatively low population. It's so unlikely that a legal team there has the capacity, bandwidth, or budget, I suppose, to buy one of these off-the-shelf products that you kind of started with what's practical for a small user.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, James, that we did it on the cheap. It probably would have been cheaper to buy the legal product from the big multinational. But look,
but for the other end users who now benefit from it, it's probably, I'm guessing, much cheaper than.
Absolutely, and look, and the reason we did it was very much to try it out, see how it would impact, and we brought in PhDs from all around the world to do it. People really the top of their game in AI to have a go at this, and what they created was fantastic. What I'd say is a 5 million person country can create a company that gets sold to Onnit. It's not a bad job
Yes, yeah, that's great. Well, speaking of very smart people producing things themselves, Ivy, I'm going to turn to you now. So DXC has it's invested quite heavily in its own legal transformation roadmap, right? So you develop BriefBox, enterprise software, a whole host of things like that. Can you just talk us through some of the work you've been doing at DXC just before you do? The results of our previous poll. So I asked legal teams in the audience to rate their own department's performance on tech. 44%, so the most popular answer, 44% rated themselves as average. Only 4% said they were very good. So I'm going to launch another poll now, which is how do you think your company is well positioned compared to other in-house legal teams? So rate yourself against your peers. Do you think you're doing better or worse? So while people are voting, Ivy, sorry, return to you. Can you talk us through some of the technology DXC has developed then?
Yeah, okay, so well, from the very beginning, when DXC founded on 2017, we actually partnered with United Lex, which is, as I mentioned just now, which is a global legal technology and service company to help restructure the global legal team. DXC had invested a lot on the legal digital transformation tools, including developing the enterprise software BriefBox as a platform for legal management, and there's various functionalities based on BriefBox. The BriefBox can help monitoring the level of risk in contracts in real time, allows the stakeholders to request legal support and assign an appropriate lawyer on demand. And it can also help the senior management team to constantly aware of the progress being made on a matter and deal and conduct online approvals, which means the senior management team can identify gaps in our coverage and move to respond to potential issues faster than ever before. From my point of view, the briefcase function, the BriefBox, is its auto-generated reports, the dashboard reports that Kyle mentioned just now as well. Well, I like this report because it can provide you the calculation and comparison of various numbers. For example, how many deals signed this week compared with the last week, how many vendor disputes and how many customer ones, what is the workload of each team members, how long to close the deal, etc. It allows us to better predict the risk, understand the issues, check the team members' performance and workload, and identify the pain points from commercial and legal perspective, which I think is very cool and in fact significantly improve the efficiency. So I think another function I like very much on BriefBox is the workroom. Like the workroom is like you can invite different people into the workroom, so we can work together like a team. You can select the people to be invited, and you can give them different access to view different documents and join different conversations. You don't need to send a lot of emails, and you can just leave the message in the workroom so all members can receive the conversation and they can properly document it. I also like another function named online approval, which is very easy to check the basic information and associated risk of the deal online. And you can actually check the communications records instead of finding previous emails. And after many years, for example, there's dispute happened after 2 years, you can looking back and see, oh, why you approved this deal, right? And what is mitigation plan raised at that moment, something like that. Have you raised this risk to the, have addressed this risk to the business, something like that. So I think it's very helpful, and it actually improved the efficiency of the legal department. I think, and also I think one of the very important criteria to value legal support is that how close legal department is partnering with the business and drive their success. I believe business is also benefit from the AI-based tool as well. They are able to receive the data with analysis on weekly basis. The data shows the deal volumes and size, win and loss numbers with reasons, and data comparison, etc. It actually helps the business and legal to interpret and align on the business strengths in order to identify strengths, weakness, and improve the allocation of resource. So I believe that it's very cool. Back to BriefBox, I think in our conversation previously, you asked me that whether or not it's it's English tool or any localization to the Chinese. Unfortunately, it's still an English tool, so it's still using for the global companies. So for some of the documents in Chinese, we cannot, the brief box cannot recognize them, automatically. But I think as China market may be going, bigger and bigger, I hope China market can be going bigger and bigger. We can have a chance to do some, improvements and to have some localizations on these tools. Yeah, okay. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Greg, I'll turn to you. So look, NTU is obviously hugely well known as a science and tech university, produces some of the best specialists in the region. But how about in terms of the tech available to the legal team? So what have you been doing since you joined to improve the use of legal tech there?
Yeah, thanks, James. So I think when I left the private industry and joined the universities, then most of my friends and colleagues said, "Have you gone to retire?" And I said, "Well, hopefully not." So what we did was one of the first things we did was to set up a legal ops team to really investigate what we could do with, as exactly had what Carl said. What are the tools available today? Because the university has 30,000 students. It has about 10,000 staff. So clearly there were tons of tech already available. So for example, on the big things that lawyers need are approval workflow tools, right? So instead of going to go out and buy one, what we did was use a very famous e-signing tool, and I won't mention what it is, retooled it to use it for an approval workflow. So before that, what the university was doing was shuffling papers around the whole campus. It's like a 200-hectare campus. So you can imagine people just moving papers from right to left, and clearly not very sustainable. So the other thing we did was, in terms of getting legal requests, previously you get phone calls, you get emails. So what we did was, again, leveraged another platform, an enterprise platform that was being used for IT tickets, right? We used it and we retooled it to make it a legal tool. So now that we can track actually who's asking what, and get data analytics from it, right? So it's an existing license. We don't have to buy any new licenses. Some of the other things we did as well, we launched a whistleblowing hotline. Again, we didn't go out and use any of the big service providers that out there for whistleblowing and compliance. We used a very basic license that we already had at the university, and that is now being used at for anybody basically who wants to make a whistleblowing claim. It's become too popular that we had double the amount of whistleblowing claims that we had in the year before. Okay, but I think the important thing is that when you do need to buy a new tool, I think about it carefully, and we did. So in the case of our board documentation, right? Before we were using emails, hard copies, printing tons and tons of board manuals. We have 20 board members because we are a public funded institution. That's a huge board. We actually moved to an online cloud-based board management software about 18 months ago. Okay, so now nothing's printed. All resolutions are done by this software. It's face recognition. It's mobile. It's anywhere, anytime, and all resolutions are captured in a centrally stored, secure place. And it was cleared by our cybersecurity team. So I think it shows that many times I think is exactly what the members had said. I think you can retool things, but then when you do need to buy something, go ahead and do it, but do it wisely.
Okay, excellent, great. So look, I'll just share the results of our previous poll. So interestingly, 44% of people on the second question felt they were performing average at an average level, but interestingly, more than half rate themselves as performing under average. So if you ask them how you stack up against your peers, 56% of people think they're doing worse than the group, which is an interesting contradiction there. Another question I'd like to ask the audience, and do please feel free to write in questions if you have any, is whether your legal team has been able to capture any useful metrics that explain the value it is bringing to business. This is, I guess, one of the things that GCs would like technology to do, and I'm going to turn to Sheldon. So look, the question of capturing useful metrics is a hugely popular one in the in-house legal community, and I believe you're involved in a project, Sheldon, that brings together a number of industry players in Australia, along with I think a few corporates from the US and Europe, to look at developing an industry-wide catalogue of metrics that GCs can use. Can you kind of tell us about this and what the industry standard that you're developing might look like?
Yeah, sure, James. So I guess from our perspective, it's to address that question. If we look at how our leaders in our businesses speak and how they evaluate things, it's primarily in numbers. So the challenge for us as a function, and this is shared with other functions in a in a corporate environment, is how do we distill what we do into metrics? And that's really for the overall purpose of really establishing the value that we know that we bring. So, and certainly from my perspective, it's also important for the legal function, which is often viewed as a bit of a lagging beast, to be seen as a leading function and someone that's kind of taking on this challenge and running with it. So the idea with this group is for us to develop a set of metrics that will allow for consistent collection and reporting of data about how our legal function, other legal functions, is operating. So starting with a dictionary that identifies key data points, key metrics, and defines them very clearly so that then they can be reported both within the organisation and then benchmarked on an apples for apples basis against functions, legal functions in other organisations. That's the intention of what this group is hoping to do, to create an industry-wide convention, I guess, of that's adopted that will help metrics be captured and reported on a consistent basis amongst a whole range of legal functions in in the ecosystem.
Yeah, interesting. Well, also interesting that 75% of the audience said that they hadn't been able to collect any useful metrics. So maybe they can drop you an email and ask what you're doing. But Susan, look, the operations community is probably slightly further ahead than many legal teams when it comes to thinking about metrics. I mean, what can you share with us? I mean, have you identified any metrics that are particularly useful in tracking what a legal team's doing?
Yeah, look, we're still on our journey as well. And I guess just building on what Sheldon has said, the only other point that I would make is the presentation or the the way that you present that data is actually really important. Otherwise, the metrics, the message kind of gets lost in the metrics. We have not landed on our metrics yet, so I can't give, I guess, any insight there, but it is important to make sure that we're presenting the information in a sustainable way, in a simple way, so people can actually understand it.
Yeah, excellent. Look, I guess one thing we wanted to touch on is the impact COVID has had on all of this and the transition to working from home. So I'm going to bring you in now, Per, please. Because look, this is in many ways a fairly radical transformation in terms of how people across an organisation work, and I guess it'd be naive to assume that old ways of working can just endure, that nothing else needs to be done. So have you been able to capture any data points looking at how the organisation, legal teams performed throughout the period of lockdown? I guess you're in semi-lockdown now in China. So.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think looking back at the last year, when closing the year now, to my surprise, we improved on our metrics. We do measure how we perform and how our contracts looks like from a risk perspective, and actually we improved a lot. And I think for various reasons, probably people have been able to focus on certain matters and maybe not been distracted by things in the office, and being able to work more focused on their tasks. So looking at my team, we have, well, looking at the metrics, we have been more efficient during last year when we didn't have working in the office every day and traveling and so on. So from that point of view, it's been very good. Looking at our company as a whole, we have performed very good, and we had a very good year last year from a performance perspective as well. So I'm very happy with that. And well, touching back on what you discussed on metrics, I think it's important to have metrics both for showing the value that the legal teams bring to the company, and also showing how the legal risk is in the company, but it's also important to show the legal team itself that and motivate people with metrics. You can actually create a lot of motivation by simple metrics and show that we are, as a legal team, we are valuable to the company, and actually what you do matters. I think that we shouldn't forget about that. And also with the situation we had the last year, motivating our employees is more important than ever. I think since we are not meeting every day and so on, we need to reach out to our employees and motivate them a bit more. When working from a distance, working from home, I have employees in many sites, so I'm used to talking with them remotely a lot. But I think more important than ever to motivate our employees.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, speaking of lockdown, I guess a number of you are logging in from personal devices, and the reason you're doing that is companies have kind of blanket policies on use of Zoom, things like that. So obviously there are kind of tech risks or perceived tech risks in working from home. So Tom, I'll turn for you. I mean, look, changing working patterns have obviously introduced some liabilities in terms of what staff are up to, but also, I guess, technological liabilities that companies now face. What are you advising on as a kind of private practice lawyer here, and what are some of the big risks companies need to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, so you have to look out for your own personal risks. So obviously the push to people working from home has got a health and safety risk. Obviously everyone's home environment is now a work environment. So you have a health and safety risk that you have to bear and take into account as well. So evaluating people's home offices from a health and safety risk is a tricky thing to do. And I know companies all around the world are grappling with that. Then you have, from a legal perspective, again, looking internally, you have the situation where your staff might be in a shared accommodation situation. Certainly there's been some examples here where some of our staff share accommodation with lawyers from other law firms or with lawyers from or people from companies which might be competitors of our clients. So you have a real risk of confidentiality breaches, loss of intellectual property, things like that. So all organizations, and we're not alone, obviously everyone has the same risk, is having to establish the size of the risk and put in place arrangements to manage that. And now in New Zealand, we've been very lucky. We've had a very short lockdown in New Zealand. Saying that, we've just come out of a snap 3-dayer, but we have had very short lockdowns. So our need to manage that risk has been relatively low, but obviously there's still a long way to go through this COVID world. Back into tech side liabilities, you know, there were companies who were rushing in to take on new technologies, cloud-based products to enable working from home. They did that without much due diligence. They did that without understanding security risks in detail. And we are seeing sort of that acting in haste, repenting at leisure. We're now seeing the repent at leisure. Can they get out of those contracts easily? What's the impact of them? Did they do enough DD in order to understand the security risks? And if not, what do they do now to put overlay of the risk protection? And then you've got, I think we touched on this before, shadowware. You know, people trying to bypass their company systems so that they can make their working lives better. And you've got IT companies grappling with trying to find suitable solutions that are secure and pass your own internal policies and processes to replace the shadowware quickly, but also making it in a way that people can still continue to function. So lots of legal risks in there that companies all around the world are grappling with. We're certainly not unique in New Zealand in doing that. And I think lawyers around the world are advising their companies in the same way.
Okay, well, I guess this touches on something that's particularly pertinent to the relationship between clients and law firms when it comes to legal tech. So, I mean, I think, Sheldon, you raised the point earlier that to some extent you expect your law firms to drive your use of legal tech, or at least to help you with awareness of what's in the market, because as you pointed out, the business of a law firm is selling legal advice and services. It's not the business of an in-house function necessarily. Well, it's not the business of your business, rather. You're serving a client. So look, I want to ask the audience, do you expect your law firms to help you or to advise you when it comes to legal tech? And while we're waiting for the answers to come in, Tom, I want to ask a follow-up there, because look, we've talked about some of the tech side liabilities from businesses transitioning to remote working. there's something else here that's relevant. I mean, GCs kind of often ask law firms to help them or to use technologies that are going to drive efficiencies, but at the same time, they make all sorts of requirements on controls over their data, no cloud policy, although that's becoming less common now. There have traditionally been no cloud policies. I mean, is that a difficult thing to keep in balance? Is there a tension there between what GCs are expecting you as a law firm to do and what they're allowing you to do?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one for firms. There's understandable pressure from GCs to put on firms to provide a greater value through becoming more efficient. Sometimes that pushes firms to look at adopting tech that's prescribed by a general counsel or an organization. And while that might drive a perceived upfront reduction in cost, they do require the organizations, their firms, to ensure robust security controls and protections on the data. And sometimes that means a firm has to then add in a different solution to protect the data, which means the cost comes back up again. So managing the GC's needs for efficiency with the firm's needs to maintain that highest level of protection of data is hard, but it's manageable, and it's manageable through a regular communication channel between the relationship partner and the general counsel and the IT teams of both companies. I'm sure the last thing a GC would want to know is their information is compromised to save a few dollars in legal fees. But in saying that, it's important that a law firm must continue to invest in solutions to create those efficiencies and just not hide behind the data security excuse.
Okay, excellent. It'd be interesting to get the panel's thoughts on this. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in with a comment on the relationship between yourselves and your external counsel when it comes to using tech. But we can see from our poll that 65% of people do in fact expect their external advisors to help with tech. Look, if no one has any comments or wants to jump in, I'll turn to Marciana, because, I mean, look, COVID and related developments have changed the way clients are working. I mean, has it changed the way you advise clients as a law firm? I mean, has there been any big shift in your approach to working on matters?
Yeah, I think legal practice, as with many other industries, we are using more and more technology, right, as a result of COVID. So, I mean, the most obvious one is in terms of communication is video conferencing, Zoom, which I love. I find the productivity is so much better, especially, I don't know, I mean, many of you might be transactional lawyers. You remember the pain of getting onto a telephone conference with 20 people there. You literally do not know who are they, who is speaking and what they are saying, right? So it's the takeaway maybe just 20 or 30% out of a 1 hour phone call. Whereas video conferencing is so much direct when you see that person who is actually speaking and you know who he is, right? So that is a good thing, and we save traveling time in terms of I mean, instead of physical meeting. And also, yeah, I think we can't get together and hold physical conference, so we migrate to online conferences. There's one lawyers conference that I have attended, and it's so cool that they have apparently webinar sections, and also they have breakout section. So they have like 20 plus tables. You can click the table, choose to sit in this table and talk to this group of people. And then you can change from this table to that table. So they try to mimic, I mean, the real life international conference situation. So that is some new tools that we are playing with, which is quite cool. And in terms of delivering advice, I think we have touched upon this security issue. Is more and more clients, they are expecting lawyers to use WeChat and WhatsApp. And personally, I think this is really a risk that basically it can be a bomb waiting to explode. Yeah, I mean, because it's really, I mean, in terms of the law society requirements, we need to protect confidentiality, and our policy is we still insist that legal advice delivery will need to be conducted through a secure channel confidentially. But clients, many of them, they do not appreciate the cybersecurity risk. They just put the whole SPA, whatever, tax indemnity flying around in WeChat, asking people to comment. They ask clients to answer legal questions online. So all these are real risks that we need to manage. Or even businesses. I have a real case that clients, they come to us. we advise them on termination of an important employee. It's an architectural firm. And then at the time of termination, it only realized that a lot of communication with the clients are through WeChat or WhatsApp. That means a lot of intellectual property or even client information is not in the hand of the company. They're in the hand of that particular employee's cell phone or his computer, and you need their cooperation in order to take back client information. So all these are really tricky. Yeah, these are the struggles that we are managing alongside technology development.
Okay, excellent. And look, Carl, I mean, so the results of that poll we just launched, 86% of GCs expect their law firms to help advise them on legal tech. Look, I guess a two-part question here. Firstly, is that true of you, or would you rather do it yourself? But I suppose the other questions, you mentioned earlier that Arcadis is kind of paying serious attention to its digitization strategy. It's transitioning to some extent in its core offering. And I guess part of that is going to come down to M&A, to buying new businesses. And I suppose out of interest, when you are involved in kind of tech-related M&As, does that change the type of firm you're looking for? I mean, are you going to a general M&A practice, or are you looking for a firm with tech-specific expertise? Is this changing how you think about the market? So I'll turn that over to you, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good series of questions there, James. Just quickly, picking up on, I guess, what Maciana's just mentioned there, because we talked about it in our sort of pre-conversation around the tsunami of WeChat, and I think that this is a very interesting crossroads for legal. We have, I guess, looking around the panel, real global connectivity in what we're doing and delivering, and with the GDPRs and then the Eurozone sort of straitjacket around privacy, I think what we have to also inject as regional counsel into that global debate is that culturally here in Asia, there's more of a comfort around transactions, commerciality. There is a trust relationship, wanting to get the deal done, doing it quick, doing it agile, not spending time on some of the these items. And I think what Maciana says is really, we have to look at it as a lens of protecting our business, but at the same time we've got to deliver business. We've got to grow that top line and make sure that we are performing at a level that stakeholders, investors require. So I think that's a very difficult in some ways dilemma. But if we reflect, do we need to unstitch ourselves from some of the compliance noise in this space, because it's what our people are expecting? In our personal lives, we trust WeChat to do personal transactions. So, does business need to move in that space? I think it's just a fascinating area, Maciana, just to pick up on what you were raising there. To come back to your other questions, in terms of law firms and legal tech from law firms, I would say all of our providers are really keen and have a lot of products and systems that they want to share with us, and we certainly do look at them, and there's a couple that we're trialing in the round. I guess me in Asia and our global legal team, we're not a behemoth. We're not a massive financial institution with an army of in-house lawyers bigger than some of the biggest law firms in the world. So we don't have the luxury to trial that, and we certainly don't have the budget. So I think where we can work with our legal providers to co-create, or where they're willing to invest a bit back in us if we're buying traditional legal services around the claims, defense services, and some of those more traditional services, and in return for that they're happy to give us some tech to work with, a bit like what Tom was mentioning earlier. Then that's probably the way we go it. And then your last question, I guess, around M&A, certainly, Arcadis, we've made some small play acquisitions in the region in this space, but I would say that the focus of our M&A strategy, as a global engineering business, is in that space. But what I would say is that when we are making those acquisitions, we are looking for full synergy wins across our business portfolio. So, not just enhancing our offer to our own clients, but also where we can be deploying and using some of that technology we are acquiring for the benefit of functions and some of the in-house operations that we do. And I would say that in terms of the M&A that we see coming up, very much around driving our operational performance, but really top line performance from the data that we already have from our clients, and really, providing self-serve platform subscription-based models for our clients to buy engineering advisory services that we can really drive forward, because the market for that is that the data that we already have, unless we can like we were saying earlier, around dashboarding for our own legal data, if we can really drive them and monetize that data for our clients, and it's a win-win for both sides. They're getting efficient assets and operations of their assets, and we at the same time are pivoting into a more agile future for our own business and our people.
Great, excellent, thank you. Well, look, Tom, I know it's late in the evening there, but can I very quickly get your thoughts on that? So obviously, as a partner of a law firm that does a lot of tech work, I mean, do you have any thoughts on the matters that Carl's been touching on there?
Just touching on M&A, I think, one thing that Mintis has here, we've got a large tech practice, and we support our M&A team by we support them most effectively in the acquisitions or divestments of tech companies by knowing what to look for. And we do see in transactions, perhaps M&A specialists, but who don't have tech support in other firms, really asking the wrong questions or completely missing the point around when they're digging into a company. So if you're in an acquisition mode and you're looking for a tech company or a company laden with technology, always pick the M&A team that will do the best job from an M&A perspective, but also look behind that M&A team as to what tech specialists they have in their organization to know what questions to look for, to know what questions to ask, and to know what to look for within those organizations, because it's all well and good to run an M&A process properly, but if you haven't asked the right questions, you're really not getting the right output. So I think that's just one point to raise, James.
Okay, excellent, great. Look, I want to move on to predictions. I know we're coming up against time, but I want to hear people's predictions very quickly. Before I do that, Susan, I just want to wrap up this section with your thoughts. A lot of this comes down to change management. It's not just either developing your own technology or buying in technology. It's getting people within the organization to use that technology to do things in a different way. And I suppose one of the ways of doing that is to bring in a person that's responsible for a change management professional. I mean, can you give us your thoughts on that? I mean, how do you actually make sure the entire organization goes along with you when you want to introduce radical change?
Absolutely, it's getting that change focus. It's showing people the benefits. A lot of projects or organisations that I've been involved in, they didn't start. I find that they didn't start early enough in terms of that journey. If you get down to the process of about to roll out technology, you've just missed the boat. So I believe you need to get them, starting early, involve the right people up front, use team members where you can, use them as change agents, get them involved in as much as you can, and make sure you set aside a good enough budget for a professional change manager or a change team who have got those right skill sets. It's like you wouldn't ask a baker to fix your car or the other way around. Right? You really need that specific skill set, which is all about people. And I find that role is, can be quite overlooked sometimes, and the importance not given to the value add of that person. But again, you can spend thousands of dollars on technology. You can have the best processes in the world, but at the end of the day, if people don't use it, it's going to flop. So, from my perspective, change management is one of the things that is probably very underrated and needs to come up in the project management world.
Okay, excellent, great. Look, I have a final question for our audience. So can you predict on a scale of 0 to 5 how you think technology is going to disrupt the operations of your legal team? And while we're doing that, Tom, I'm going to come back to you because You told a funny story earlier while we were offline. I mean, look, it's pretty common in the legal industry for people to overestimate the extent to which technology is going to change the profession. You told me you were in a pitch once and you were asked to give a prediction. So maybe you can tell the story. Yeah,
it was the chief technology officer who I mentioned before, who came up with the idea of McCarthy Finch. He and I were sitting it wasn't so much a pitch, it was a presentation to a large financial institution in New Zealand about the future of technology, and we both were talking. We were asked about when AI would disrupt the legal industry in a really big way, and I said it's going to take 5 to 10 years, and he said 1 to 2 years. That was 5 years ago, so I win. But look, I think there is a tendency for lawyers to overestimate the impact tech will have. I also think there's a huge tendency for technology companies and commentators to overestimate the impact that technology is going to have. Gartner yesterday came out with a report. I don't know if you've seen that one, but Gartner came out with a report yesterday indicating the impact on the large law firms that technology is going to have in a very short space of time. So I think in general, we tend to overestimate the effect of technology and underestimate the effect that it actually has. So overestimate the effect that it will have in the short run and underestimate the effect that it'll have in the long run. Same is true for timing. I think we anticipate something's going to happen sooner, but when it happens, which is a lot longer down the line, the impact is much bigger than we thought. So AI is the smart contract on the blockchain, quantum computing, no doubt, to go the same way. My light has just gone off in the deep darkness of Auckland, so it's not the power hasn't gone off. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of technology hype still around, and I think we all need to just be a bit wary of that one. But certainly we are seeing the momentum coming through on a lot of this technology now. But I think it's true disruption. It's still a little way away from the tech industry. Okay, and try and get my light back on.
Yeah, no worries. Marciana, what's your perspective on this? As practicing law in Hong Kong, I mean, do you think there's a natural limit on the types of matter this sort of legal technology can handle? Do you think it's destined to be confined to low complexity stuff, or are you expecting it to disrupt the industry more radically than that?
I don't see there's a natural limits that legal tech would develop. Apparently there I mean, a lot of tech offering which are becoming more and more sophisticated. But for legal tech to take over more substantive or more complicated work from human being, I would say there are several obstacles to get over. One thing is, I mean, in terms of value of a lawyer, I would say like 20 to 30% is actually the legal advisory, meaning telling you what is the law, what are the regulations. So this part of the work probably robots can do, because or you Google, you have quite a bit of information. But the way I see is the value of a lawyer very much also is the value to be able to offer solution. So when you know that these are the rules, these are the laws, so what's next? You need a human being to assess the situation and to come up with a viable legal solution to solve the commercial problem. So this is something that, I mean, based on the current offering, I still think a human brain is required. Especially you need to tailor the solution to your client's requirements and also adapt to culture. So every client has his own background situation, I mean, consideration to look at. So this is, I mean, the value of human being that still can't be overtaken. And the second obstacle is about machine learning, because I understand quite a few legal advisory legal tool is based on machine learning. It means that you need to invest a lot of time and resources to teach the AI in order for it to become smart. Then to manage machine learning itself is an art. You need to have your own governance structure within your organization to decide who to teach the machine, what kind of information you feed into the machine so that it become useful to your organization. I think both law firms, private practice, and also in-house team, we are facing the same issue of investing or persuading the business to invest in legal tech, because it also involves a lot of investment of time. And if the machine learning process is not managed properly, properly, I would say the problem may not surface immediately, but it will. It may surface later, like 2 years down the road. You realize that it has not been fed with correct information. Then the company will need to pay the price. So that uncertainty that I think people are still not clear as to how to use a machine learning tool. So this is the second obstacle. The third obstacle is who owns the problem. So if you engage a external law firm, they have a very big insurance policy to stand by professional indemnity. But if you, as a legal team, you take on a legal tool, and then a problem happens, then it's very unlikely that you can sue the legal tech provider, and then you take on the problem yourself, you own it. So that's another reluctancy that I see for legal teams to really take a bold step to take on a tool that does legal advisory that can replace lawyers.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Well, look, interestingly from our poll, 78% of you in the audience think that tech's going to disrupt the in-house function to some extent. 48% think that disruption will be radical. So I have one final question for you in the audience and one final question to our panel before we wrap up. So the final question to you in the audience is a very similar question, but to what extent do you think legal tech is going to disrupt the way law firms operate, the law firm model? And a final question here for you in the panel. So look, Marciana just touched on some of the more advanced tech coming down the pipeline, AI and the like. Has anyone in the audience, on our panel rather, been able to identify a good use case of some of this more advanced legal tech within the functions at Sheldon? I don't know if you've been doing anything interesting here.
Yeah, we've used machine learning technology. We've trialed it in a number of spaces, mainly in the areas of contract review, so incoming contracts on the counterparty's terms and reviewing those against our standard position. And we've done that on a number of occasions, probably over the last 3 years. And I think it's fair to say that we've been underwhelmed by the results of that. But equally, it's not discouraging us from trialing it. So we are actually, continuing to look at it. And in fact, through a referral from one of our panel firms, we're actually trialing the product that Tom referred to earlier. So we're going to give that a go and continue to see it as something that we'll continue to trial until it does work, and also trying to be realistic about our expectations for what it will deliver. So looking for an 80-20 kind of outcome. So pick up some key high level issues really easily for the lawyers so that they can then focus on the more complex technical nuanced issues as well. So view it as, rather than a complete solution, a help in contract review.
Yes, okay. Greg, I see you've turned your microphone on. Do you have anything to share here?
Yeah, no, I think definitely agree with Sheldon. I think there are quite a few of these platforms out there, the machine learning that that obviously can learn from the more reviews that you do. I think the cost benefit analysis is still hasn't been proven yet. I think that's the issue. I think, but I mean, the technology is amazing, and I think it's only going to get better over the years. So I think the question is how are we going to leverage that, and what do we need to do as lawyers to change our practices and habits to work with that? Because I think in the next 5 years, it's not going to be the same as some of the platforms we have today. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, but completely agree with Sheldon at the moment, unfortunately. But change is coming, no doubt.
And very quickly, Greg, I mean, one of the signs of that change, I believe you've been working with an LPO. Is that correct? Yeah,
that is. So I think this is where, again, it was quite interesting, where the first thought when you think LPO, you probably think one of the countries in APAC or ASEAN, right? Interestingly, the LPO in this case is based in Europe. So it's not always the place that gives the most competitive value. I think the other thing interesting was that by using that ticketing system that I was talking about, we managed to get the provider onto the same platform. So the users on our side, the business users, couldn't tell the difference and don't even know that there's an LPO provider behind the service. So that's what you mean by using that technology in a different way. So very interesting times, I think, and looking forward to the things to come.
Okay, excellent. Well, also interesting that our audience think that legal technology is going to have a more disruptive effect, relatively, a more disruptive effect on law firms than it is on in-house teams. No one thinks it'll have no effect or very little impact. That's interesting. And look, very finally here, Susan, I want to ask you, so one of the issues that's at stake here, I guess, is changing how staff interact with suppliers. So not just how they interact with each other, but how they interact with suppliers, major supplier in the legal team, obviously being law firms. Is your work, does it touch on that? I mean, are you changing how staff interact with law firms, their behaviors when it comes to using external counsel?
Absolutely, we are. Through the project that we're working on, it's changing ways of working for, for internal, the internal law team or the legal team. It's also changing the ways of working for those clients within our business that will interact with them, as well as the law firms that we interact with or send, work out to. I think in order to have a really sustainable change, you make all those three parties work together. So yeah, for me, the external law firms are just another one of our stakeholders that we really need to get on board. And if everybody works together, I see, a really powerful change within our organisation and our project space as well.
Excellent, great. Well, look, I'll wrap this up by referring to a couple of comments from the audience. Someone has pointed out that Matjan has articulated the challenges that are likely to make lawyers and law firms hesitant to use most of the digital software, but we nonetheless have a question. So someone wants to know your thoughts, and this is a very final comment from each of you perhaps, on the most efficient apps that you can recommend. So Carl, who has left, he had another call. I think he mentioned Power BI, which is part of the Office 365 suite. But does anyone else have any recommendations for our audience on legal tech or apps that are particularly useful to use right now? Anyone want to jump in with their thoughts?
I think it's obviously using the Office 365 suite and leveraging that as much as possible is a really valuable thing, and it's a low-cost option. I think there are a good bunch of, for an in-house function, matter management systems, and there's a couple that are local, so Australia and New Zealand. There's Zakia, and there's also LawView that I'd call out as being really good matter management systems for internal legal functions that have other capability as well that adds to that.
Okay, excellent. I'm not sure where the questioner is based, but presumably Clock accepts applicants from all over the region.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if they're interested, they can join Clock and join the discussion. Greg, Tom, Ivy, any recommendations for the audience on technologies they can use right now that are kind of plug and play and relatively easy to get up and running?
Yeah, I agree with Sheldon. It does depend on what type of organisation you are. If you're a large one, there's obviously an immense number of products out there, and I know any number of people would be willing to sell them to you. If you're relatively small, use what you've got in the shed. Microsoft tools are fantastic. Even SharePoint to store your documentation within is still a good product. And Teams is a wonderful way of collaborating within your own organisation. And you've got now the ability through Teams to actually collaborate documents externally as well. So you can share documentation. I think the biggest innovation that is really working properly now is collaborating on the same document at the same time and not having to do it through the Google Suite. So the Microsoft Suite does that now as well. But if I will put a plug out for our old company, do have a crack with Orthodox. You can buy it on Microsoft App Store, and it's cheap as chips, and it helps with that document review, but it also helps with drafting. It gives you that clause bank, the ability to keep your own clauses that you can use on a daily basis for your own contractual drafting. It's a feature I've been storing pieces of paper in my filing cabinets for the last 20 years of practice. Now you can actually store it online. And so
that's Orthodox, is it?
It's Orthodox on the Microsoft.
So it's author as in one who writes some docs.
That terrible pun, that author and then DOCS.
Yeah, but it's AUTA. Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, excellent. Ivy, any final thoughts from you?
Yes, I agree that using the Teams, if you cannot invest a lot at this moment, just use what you have for free, or just small investment like teams. For example, DXC's recently, had a strategic collaboration with Microsoft on the workplace experience, and we have built up the platform with Microsoft called DXC My Work Style Platform. And this platform will leverage Microsoft Service Package, including the Microsoft 365 Teams, Dynamic 365, etc. So you can use this, combined enterprise softwares to help you to, do some, faster works. And if later on there's more investment, you can actually, I think there's a lot of Chinese, I'm not sure if there's Chinese company in this room, but there are some not very expensive Chinese tools in the market that you can actually cooperate with them. And I know that some of the platforms in China, they are going to free. And you can, for example, I know there's Kinnan Medicines now is collaborate with one of the companies, and they have the online platform for free, so they can help you to check the laws and translate things, something like that. So I think all those are very good resources.
Sorry, this is the Kingwood Madison platform. This is basically like it's a competitor to LexisNexis, Westlaw, all of these paid for data sets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe later on we might not going to subscribe the LexisNexis or Westlaw. We may have more free resource. And the law firms have subscriptions on the WeChat every day, on the new laws and new articles. So you have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of things to learn now. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, yes, I guess returning to our theme from the introduction, it sounds like China's the place to be when it comes to innovation in legal tech. Look, thank you all. I can see that Tom has given a plug for Orthodox in the chat. So if you're interested in the correct spelling or want to search for that on the Microsoft App Store, please do. Tom, look, thank you for staying up so late. Is it past midnight where you are now?
20 minutes to go.
20 minutes to go. Okay, well, I'll let you get off before midnight, before you turn into a pumpkin. But look, thanks to everyone for joining us. Thanks to our audience, and also thanks to WSG, firstly, for, I guess, backing the report we produced, and also for facilitating this. We'll send the report round to all of you in the audience once the video is ready. But look, thank you very much to our panel. Really appreciate it. Great speaking to you. Fascinating discussion. Thanks very much.